All right, let's dive into something that's all around us, but we barely ever think about. How everything gets its name. I mean, everything, from a huge blue whale to the tiniest little microbe. There's this amazing logic behind it all, and believe it or not, it all kind of starts with a question about a very, very famous dinosaur. I mean, come on, everybody knows this one, right? But have you ever stopped to ask why we call it Tyrannosaurus rex? Yeah, it sounds awesome, totally epic. But is it just some random Latin words somebody thought sounded cool? Well, the answer is a big, emphatic no.
Turns out that super famous name is just one tiny piece of this huge, elegant puzzle. Think of it like a universal filing system for all of nature. It was designed centuries ago, and its whole purpose is to let scientists, no matter where they are in the world, know exactly which creature they're talking about. No mix-ups, no confusion.
And that amazing system has a name, binomial nomenclature. It sounds complicated, but it's really not. Let's just break it down. Bi means two. Nomen means name. So yeah, it's literally a two-name naming system. And that's the core idea, simple but totally revolutionary. Every single species can be perfectly identified with just two little words. But oh man, it wasn't always this neat and tidy. You have to understand, before the system came along, the world of scientific naming was, to put it lightly, a total mess. We're talking a real, genuine naming nightmare. So back then, scientists were using something called a polynomial system. Poly, right? It means many. And that's what the names were. Many, many words. A species name wasn't just a simple label. It was this long, rambling, descriptive paragraph in Latin. And the worst part? It could change from one scientist to the next. It was so clunky and just wildly inefficient.
Okay, just get a load of this. This whole thing was the actual scientific name for a type of plantain. It basically translates to the plantain with the fuzzy, egg-shaped, pointy leaves, a cylinder-shaped flower spike, and a smooth stem. Now, just imagine trying to remember that for every single plant or animal you study. No way.
And here's the magic. Look at the difference. That gigantic, unwieldy phrase got replaced by this, plantagomedia. 2 words. That's it. Simple, elegant, and you can't mistake it for anything else. This right here really shows you the genius of the new system. So the big question is, who do we have to thank for this incredible upgrade? Well, that brings us to the hero of our story, a Swedish botanist named Carl Linnaeus. This guy looked at all that chaos and basically said, nope, we can do better. And he came up with a solution that would literally change the course of biology forever. Now, to be fair, Linnaeus didn't just invent this idea out of nowhere. The concept of using 2-word names had kind of been floated around before, especially by a guy named Gaspard Ballin way back in 1622. But here's the thing, Linnaeus was the one who actually made it work. He applied it consistently and systematically to everything, first for all plants in 1753, and then for animals 5 years later. He's the one who made it the universal standard we use today. So, what was the big idea? What was the secret sauce? It was this. Linnaeus' stroke of genius was realizing you had to separate a species' name from its description. He figured out that a name just needs to be a unique label, like a tag. That's its only job. All that long, detailed, descriptive stuff, you can put that somewhere else. And that one simple idea freed up the name to be short, stable, and something you could actually remember. And boy, did it work. It was a massive success. And you can see why, right? It was just practical. The names were short and easy to remember. Because it was so user-friendly, scientists all over the world started using it. It guaranteed that every species had one, and only one, correct name, and it gave the whole system stability, which is absolutely crucial if you're trying to study something over decades or even centuries. Okay, so we know the why. Now let's get into the how. What are the actual rules of the game? The cool thing is the structure is super intuitive. The easiest way to think about it is like your own name. The first word is the genus. That's like your last name or your surname. It tells you what bigger family you belong to. The second word is the species name. That's like your first name or given name. It pinpoints the specific individual within that larger group. So for humans, it's Homo, that's our genus, and Sapiens, that's our species. So where do these names actually come from? Well, they can come from pretty much anywhere, which is part of the fun. Sometimes they're descriptive, like Erythroxylum, which is just Greek for red wood. Sometimes they honor people or named after the place they were found. They can even be borrowed from totally different languages. And, my favorite part, sometimes scientists just have a little fun with it.
like the entomologist who named a genus of fly Pieza, and then named a species inside it Pieza P. Get it? Piece of pie. You gotta love that. Now, there are actual rule books for all this stuff, different international codes for plants and animals, and they have some interesting little differences. For example, the rulebook for plants, fungi, and algae says the two names can't be exactly the same, but the animal rulebook, it totally allows it. And that's how we get some awesome repetitive names like bison for the American bison. All right, so we've got our two-part name down, but where does that actually fit in the grand scheme of things? Let's zoom out for a second and look at the whole picture. Think of that two-part name as just the last two lines of a much longer biological mailing address. It's part of this big hierarchy that goes from the super broad, like domain, all the way down to the super specific, which is the species. This whole system lets us pinpoint the exact place of any living thing in the giant tree of life. So for us, Homo sapiens, our address starts way up at domain eukarya, goes through kingdom Animalia, and on, all the way down to our specific name. You have to remember, this whole system was cooked up back in the 1700s. And what's absolutely incredible is how powerful and relevant it still is today. It's not stuck in the past either. It's constantly evolving to keep up with all the new stuff we're discovering. Like, for example, how we classify things has totally changed. Linnaeus was basically grouping things based on how they looked, their physical traits. But today, with genetics, we focus on something called cladistics, which is all about grouping things based on their evolutionary family tree. You know, who's related to who. But here's the key. Even though our understanding of that family tree has gotten way more sophisticated, the simple two-part naming system, it's still the absolute foundation of it all. And if you need any more proof of just how powerful and long-lasting this idea is, well, just look at this date. We're talking super recent. Yep, in 2021, the big international committee that handles naming viruses made it official. From now on, all new viruses will use the binomial system. That's right, a system invented in the 1700s for plants and animals is so tough and so flexible that we're now using it to bring order to one of the newest, most complicated frontiers in all of biology, the world of viruses. That's just amazing. So, there you have it. A simple system born out of a need to clean up a huge mess. It was perfected by its own simplicity, and it's so powerful that it's still shaping how we see the living world today. It makes you wonder, right? As we keep discovering millions of new species, how is this beautifully elegant system from the 1700s going to help us map out the entire future of life on Earth?